It all started at a restaurant, the Machu's Red Fox in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. A nice place, a steakhouse. July 30th, 1975. Jimmy Hoffa was supposed to meet two men there. Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone, a Detroit mob boss, and Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano, a Teamsters official and captain in the Genovese crime family. Hoffa was waiting in the parking lot. He was impatient. He called his wife out. He said they were late, then he was gone. Vanished. The FBI got the case. It was the biggest missing person case in America. Maybe the world. They threw everything they had at it. Hundreds of agents, thousands of interviews, decades of work. And they failed. They never found him. They never charged anyone with his murder. The whole thing became a national punchline. A mystery wrapped in a joke. Where's Jimmy? Check under your sofa. Check Giant Stadium. People ask what went wrong. They point to mob secrecy. They point to the code of silence. They point to witnesses being too scared to talk. And all of that is true. But it's not the real reason the FBI failed. The biggest mistake the FBI made in the Hoffa case was simple. It was fundamental. They got tunnel vision. They focused on the wrong thing from the very beginning. They became obsessed with finding the body. This obsession, this single-minded hunt for a corpse, poisoned the entire investigation. It turned a complex conspiracy case into a ghoulish treasure hunt. It wasted time, money, and manpower. It allowed the real culprits to sit back and watch the show. The FBI brought shovels and backhoes to a fight that required subpoenas and psychological pressure. They were looking for bones in the dirt when they should have been dissecting a power structure. The search for the body wasn't just a part of the failed investigation, it was the cause of it. In the first hours and days, looking for the man himself made sense. It was a kidnapping. A missing person. You check the hospitals, you check the morgues, you search the immediate area. The FBI found Hoffa's car in the restaurant parking lots. That was a good start. They brought in scent dogs. The dogs tracked his scent to the spot where a different car had been parked. This was the car of Charles Chucky O'Brien, Hoffa's surrogate son, a key piece of evidence. The FBI knew, almost immediately, that Hoffa got into that car. They knew he didn't leave the Machu's Red Fox on his own. This was the critical moment, the fork in the road for the investigation. Path 1 was to treat this like a standard homicide. You have a victim, you have a potential crime scene, the car. You look for physical evidence. Hair, blood, fibers. You try to figure out where the car went. You try to find the body. This is Homicide 101. Path 2 was to see this for what it was. This wasn't a random street crime. This was an organized crime hit. The victim wasn't just some guy, he was Jimmy Hoffa. The former president of the most powerful union in the country. A man who had battled the government, gone to prison, and was now fighting to regain control of the Teamsters. And the men he was supposed to meet weren't dentists. They were high-ranking mafiosi. A mob hit is different. It's designed to be clean. It's designed to leave no witnesses and no physical evidence. The people who do it are professionals. They think about forensics. They plan the disposal of the body with extreme care. The body is the one piece of evidence that can unravel everything, so they make it disappear. For good. The FBI chose Path 1. They stuck to the standard playbook. They impounded Chucky O'Brien's car and tore it apart looking for clues. They found some scents. The dogs reacted to, but the physical evidence was thin. They leaned on O'Brien, but he denied everything, and they started looking for the body. This is where the fatal mistake began to calcify. They believed that finding Hoffa's body was the key to solving the case. They thought a body would lead them to the killers. In reality, it was the other way around. The killers could have led them to the body, but they never put enough pressure on the right people. Think about the suspects. The FBI had a very good idea of who was involved from day one. They knew about the meeting with Giacalone and Provenzano. They knew these men had powerful motives to get rid of Hoffa. That Hoffa wanted his throne back. The mob had grown very comfortable with the new Teamsters leadership, who gave them easy access to the union's massive pension fund. Hoffa was a threat to that. He was unpredictable, he was angry, he had made threats. He said if he got back in power, he would clean house. He would cut the mob off from their golden goose. More than that, Hoffa knew things. He knew where the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. He had worked with the mob for decades. He had made deals, he had helped them. He had secrets on everyone. While he was in prison, he might have started talking, or threatened to talk. For the mob, Jimmy Hoffa had gone from an asset to a liability. A very dangerous liability. So the FBI had the motive, they had the means, they had the opportunity. They had a short list of prime suspects. The conspiracy was right there in front of them. It involved Giacalone, Provenzano, and their network of soldiers and associates. It likely had the blessing of higher-ups in the mob commission, like Russell Bufalino, a quiet but immensely powerful boss from Pennsylvania. Instead of dedicating all their resources to breaking this conspiracy, they started chasing tips about where the body might be. and the tips started pouring in. Every jailhouse snitch, every con artist, every person with a grudge, every crank with a psychic vision started calling the FBI. And the FBI listened. This led to the spectacle of the digs. The first big one was at a farm in Milford, Michigan, not far from the restaurant. The farm was owned by a man with mob ties. The tips seemed credible, so the FBI descended. They brought in massive earth-moving equipment. They dug for days. The media set up camp. It was a circus. They found nothing. This set the pattern for the next 40-plus years. A tip would come in, the FBI would get a search warrant, the media would get wind of it, and the digging would begin. They dug up a driveway in Roseville, Michigan, based on a tip from a dying informant. They found nothing. They dug up the soil under a swimming pool. Nothing. They spent weeks searching a horse farm. Nothing. They took samples from the floorboards of a Detroit house. Nothing. One of the most famous searches was under the Pulaski Skyway in New Jersey. A mob hitman, Donald Unti, the Greek Frankos, claimed that Hoffa was killed in Michigan, driven to New Jersey, and buried in concrete at the construction site of the old Giants Stadium. This tip had legs. It made a certain kind of sense. It was dramatic. So the FBI went to the spot Frankos pointed out, a patch of swampy land next to the highway. They did soil tests, they brought in geophysicists, they found nothing. Then there was the theory from Frank the Irishman Sheeran. He was a longtime Hoffa associate and mob enforcer. Near the end of his life, he claimed that he personally shot Hoffa in a house in Detroit. He said he was told it was just a meeting, but when they arrived, it was an ambush. He claimed he shot his old friend twice in the back of the head. The body, he said, was taken to a crematorium and incinerated. The FBI went to the house Sheeran described. They pulled up the floorboards. Using advanced forensic techniques, they found traces of blood. They matched the DNA. It wasn't Hoffa's. Another dead end. Each one of these digs was a public relations disaster for the FBI. Every time they showed up with their shovels and their serious faces, they were making a promise to the public. This time, we're gonna find him. And every time they packed up their equipment and left with nothing but dirt on their boots, they looked foolish. They looked incompetent. The mob, on the other hand, looked brilliant. They looked untouchable. They had managed to make one of the most famous men in America disappear without a trace, and the best law enforcement agency in the world couldn't even find a shoelace. The real cost wasn't just embarrassment. The real cost was a complete misallocation of resources and focus. Imagine if all the man-hours, all the money spent on soil analysis and backhoe rentals, all the brainpower dedicated to vetting dubious tips had been focused elsewhere. Imagine if they had treated this like a massive RICO case from the start. What would that have looked like? It would have meant less digging and more listening. It would have meant putting relentless 24/7 surveillance on every single known suspect. Not just watching their cars, but bugging their homes, their businesses, their social clubs. The goal wouldn't be to hear them say, "We buried Jimmy at the farm." The goal would be to catch them in the hundreds of other crimes they were committing every day. Loan sharking, extortion, illegal gambling. The idea is to squeeze them. You build airtight cases against them for other crimes. You get them on a tax evasion charge that will send them to prison for 10 years. You get them on an extortion charge that will put them away for 20. Then you go to them in a quiet room and you lay out the options. We have you. You are going away for a long, long time. Your wife will get old. Your kids will grow up. You will die in a cell. Or you can tell us what you know about the Hoffa conspiracy. Notice the wording, not tell us where the body is, but tell us about the conspiracy. Who gave the order? Who was in the meetings? Who planned the logistics? Who drove the car? Who cleaned up the mess? A murder case can be prosecuted without a body. It's harder, but it happens all the time. A conspiracy case is about the agreement. The FBI needed to prove that these men agreed to make Hoffa disappear. The successful disposal of the body was just a consequence of that agreement. By making the body the Holy Grail, the FBI gave the mob an incredible amount of leverage. An informant's information about the location of the body became the most valuable commodity. So informants lied, they made up stories to get better deals or to settle old scores. The FBI, in its desperation, kept taking the bait. If they had ignored the body, they could have changed the entire dynamic. Instead of asking a low-level guy, "Where is he buried?" they could have said, "We don't care where he's buried. We have you on tape planning the kidnapping of a rival bookie. That's a life sentence. But if you testify about the meeting where Tony Pro said Hoffa had to go, we can make that go away." That's real pressure. That's how you break a conspiracy. You start at the bottom, and you work your way up, flipping one soldier after another until you get to the capos and the bosses. The FBI had the tools. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, was passed in 1970. It was a powerful new weapon designed specifically to take down organized crime families. It allowed prosecutors to charge leaders for the crimes they ordered others to do. The Hoffa case was a textbook scenario for a RICO prosecution. It was an enterprise, the mob, committing a crime, murder, to further its goals, which was control of the Teamsters pension fund. But the FBI's focus was stuck in the mud, literally. The obsession with the body also revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of the mob's psychology. For the FBI, finding Hoffa's body meant solving the crime. For the mob, Hoffa's body not being found was the whole point. It was a statement. It was a demonstration of power. It wasn't just about killing a man, it was about erasing him. It sent a message to anyone else who might think of crossing them. We can make you cease to exist. There will be no grave to visit. There will be no funeral. There will be no closure. There will only be a void. The FBI, by desperately searching for what the mob had expertly hidden, was playing right into their hands. They were validating the mob's power with every failed dig. Over the years, the investigation became less about justice and more about institutional pride. The Hoffa case was a scar on the FBI's reputation. Finding the body became a way to heal that scar. To finally declare victory. But they were trying to win a game that had ended on July 30th, 1975. The mob had already won, they achieved their objective, Hoffa was gone, their control of the union was secure. The river of money from the pension fund continued to flow. Everything the FBI did after that was just cleanup. And they couldn't even manage that. Think about the human cost. For the Hoffa family, the endless cycle of tips and digs was a unique form of torture. Every few years, their hopes would be raised. A new credible lead. A new search. Maybe this time they would get some answers. Maybe this time they could finally have a proper burial. And every time, those hopes were crushed. The case became a media spectacle, and they were forced to relive their trauma over and over again on the evening news. What should have happened is this. Within the first year, the FBI should have convened a grand jury. They should have subpoenaed every single person connected to the case, from Chucky O'Brien to Tony Giacalone to Russell Bufalino. They should have put them under oath. They would all plead the fifth, of course. But that's just the start. You grant some of the smaller fish immunity in exchange for testimony. You squeeze them with other charges. You turn them against each other. You create an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust within the mob's ranks. Who's talking? Who's going to crack? The case wouldn't be called the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. It would be the United States versus Anthony Giacalone et al. The indictment wouldn't be for murder. It would be for conspiracy to violate civil rights, kidnapping, and a host of RICO predicates. The goal would be to dismantle the criminal enterprise that carried out the hit. Whether they ever found the body would be a footnote. The real victory would be putting the conspirators in prison for the rest of their lives. But that didn't happen. Instead, the case file grew thicker with reports of failed searches. The list of suspects grew older, and one by one they died. Tony Giacalone died of natural causes. Tony Provenzano died in prison on other charges. Russell Bufalino died of old age. Frank Sheeran died. All the men who likely sat in a room and decided Jimmy Hoffa's fate, and all the men who carried out the order took their secrets to the grave. An undiscovered, unmarked grave, just like the one they gave their victim. Today, the FBI still gets tips. Every few years, there's a new headline. FBI searching for Hoffa's remains in Michigan Field. And the whole sad circus starts up again. It's a testament to a mistake made nearly half a century ago. A mistake of focus. A mistake of strategy. A mistake of seeing a pile of dirt instead of a web of conspiracy. The biggest mistake the FBI made was to believe that the truth was buried in the ground. It wasn't. The truth was sitting in social clubs in Detroit and union halls in New Jersey. It was in the minds of the men who planned and executed the hit. The FBI never managed to excavate that truth because they were too busy digging in the wrong places. They were looking for a body, and in the process, they lost the case. The failure to solve the Jimmy Hoffa murder is not a story about the mob's perfection. It's a story about the FBI's obsession. They couldn't see the forest for the trees, and they couldn't find the conspiracy for the corpse. And Jimmy Hoffa, wherever he is, remains a symbol of that failure. A ghost haunting the institution that never understood how to catch him.